it's really important to make sure that you don't put certain foods on a pedestal. So all foods are neutral. There's no moral value in food. So you're not a good kid if you eat your vegetables. You're not a bad kid if you don't eat your vegetables. You're not a bad kid if you eat too much candy. Candy is neutral. So it starts out by just offering certain types of food, so whatever food you're eating, and then making it so that they don't think that sweets are a treat and they don't think that they're bad either.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman, and if you have ADHD and are feeling overwhelmed, chaotic, and negative self-beliefs, you're in the right place. The Successful with ADHD podcast shares my guests' journeys of overcoming challenges, offering their tips and strategies for success to empower you to take control of your life and thrive with ADHD. Let's get started.
Hi, Nicole, and welcome back to Successful with ADHD.
Thank you, Brooke. I'm excited to be on again.
So, Nicole and I have known each other for several years now. I think we pretty much started our businesses at the same time. Nicole is a registered dietitian and intuitive eating coach. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a registered dietitian, a certified diabetes care and education specialist, and a mom, first-time mom to a 14-year-old little firecracker who doesn't stop moving.
She's the
And
cutest.
yeah, she's cute and she's all over the place already. And I have a private practice. I help adults with ADHD basically simplify their eating and stop binge eating so that they can live a better life. They can eat consistently, improve their relationship with food, stop binging. So I run this private practice along with being a full-time mom.
That's
Very
so easy,
part-time.
isn't it?
It's very difficult, but it's doable for anyone who's listening. It's definitely doable.
Yes. So many questions about that. You know, both of us have had our first child at around the same time. And your schedule is slightly different because you do not have a nanny. So I 100% admire you that you have a very operating business doing very well, and you're doing an amazing job as a mom. But before we get there, if it's okay with you, what initially convinced you to go seek an ADHD diagnosis?
Well, I kind of had a little breakdown, like many of us do. And
Just a
because I
little.
think, like many of us with ADHD, it's like you kind of know you have something, but you don't actually do anything about it until you have to, right? It kind of like pushed me into it. I always knew that I had trouble concentrating and was struggling in school to focus and was, kind of more attentive than hyperactive. And I was always kind of spaced out, had trouble making friends, and just had, a lot of those similar symptoms that women with ADHD have. But it wasn't until I was 33 that I got diagnosed, actually. Right before that, actually, I was working as a medical device rep for this company where was in charge of basically the entire LA area, where I had
Oh,
to
wow.
go to different endocrinologists in the area and make my own schedule and try to figure out the routing and where I was going to go and when and how I was going to schedule everyone. It was basically like pushing your executive functions to the max. And it was so difficult for me, and I couldn't figure out why. I was so stressed. And that's when I kind of assumed that I had it. That was like 2018. And then I didn't do anything about it until 2020 at the start of the pandemic, when I was like going stir crazy in my apartment. Like, please get me out of here. Somebody, like, I felt like I was a constricted animal and I needed to get out
Oh
of my
my
head
gosh.
and my body. So that's when I was like, okay, I need to get a diagnosis. And so that's when I finally did.
So it's like the first time that you were alone with your thoughts for that long.
Uh-huh.
and trapped in your head.
Yeah. There was no escape. There was no like, the normal things that bring us dopamine on a day-to-day
Mm-hmm.
basis. I wasn't getting it. And so I was constantly eating. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of why I started my business with ADHD and
Right. And
eating
you didn't
because
even know at the time that you had ADHD, right?
right, I didn't know it. I had an idea, but no one had ever told us and like no one ever mentioned to dietitians like by the way, ADHD and eating is a thing. Like you don't get taught that in school. I had
Mm-hmm.
already been a dietitian for like 8 years, but I had never even heard of the link between the two. So that's when I like really dove into it and figured out the link between disordered eating and ADHD and all these things. But it was really my diagnosis that linked all of those things together and just made me feel so validated. Everything clicked. And I was like, oh, thank God I'm not broken. Like, there's nothing wrong with
Yes.
me. It's just my brain works differently.
Yeah. So you were really the spearheader of ADHD and binge eating out there in social media lands. I did when you started. I think it was you and one other person. So for you to make that connection and educate so many people out there who are struggling with intuitive eating and ADHD and the connection, that's really remarkable. You're a visionary.
Thank you. Yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
there was a few of us who were doing ADHD and intuitive eating. There were a lot of dietitians that were focused more on like what not to eat,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the restrictive end of it. I think
Mm-hmm.
where my focus lied was okay, all of those things aren't working. The restrictions aren't working for us. And we don't do well with outside rules a lot of times, right? Like
What do you mean?
we hate structure, but we need it.
Thriving on
So,
it at the same time.
yeah. So, like, I think just a lot of the food rules and the diet culture and all that was surrounding and like eating with ADHD, just I realized was actually triggering our disordered eating and our binge eating and all of that. So, that's why I dove into it and just was like, this needs to change. And I created my whole business around that.
So fascinating. So you were in a role that was very challenging for your executive functions. You got out of it. You
Right.
started your business.
Yes. Yeah, I was a dietitian for 8 years. Well, I had started my business right when I got diagnosed. And then I switched from being like specialist in diabetes and kidney disease
Yeah.
and actually weight loss prior to intuitive
Well,
eating until
yeah.
realizing that it's so harmful. I switched everything over when I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the missing link and just kind of went full head into intuitive eating at that point.
So you are a mom, a new mom,
Right.
and a wife, and you have moved across the country and possibly to a different country soon. Um, and you have a business. How are you managing?
Um, it's definitely been like a crazy ride the last couple of years. Like just becoming a parent in general, like no matter how successful you are, no matter how many books you read, no matter how many coaches you have, like becoming a parent is so unique to everyone's situation, especially with ADHD. And I don't know if anyone knows this, but like if you're a woman who's listening and you have breastfed your baby, or even just after you deliver, your hormones drop super low, right? So when
Oh,
estrogen
yeah.
drops, your dopamine also drops along with it. And so your symptoms of ADHD are going to be really bad, like mine were. And I don't want that to like stop you from having kids or anything. If anyone's listening, I just want you to be aware and just be prepared for it so that you can set yourself up for success when you do have a child. I think the main thing for me was having that support. I actually moved home to my hometown to have the baby because I
Hmm.
knew that I was going to need support. And at the time, we weren't living around any family at all. So I was like, okay, I'm going to accept help, which is something that's really difficult for us. And actually, during my pregnancy, I knew that because I was an entrepreneur and I didn't have maternity leave or anything like that, I needed to do something so that I could fund my maternity leave and actually, have my business going. So that's when I created my self-paced course during pregnancy. I was like, okay, this is my deadline. I have to do this in order to
The
have
urgency
money.
was there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I created the deadline. And that's one of the things that I recommend for people when they have a business or just in life in general is to create hard deadlines. Even if it's a fake deadline, you can just have that be your motivation. I literally got the course out the day before I went into labor. I was like, oh my God, I just finally finished it. And the next day, my body was like, ha. And then baby was like, okay, I'm ready to come now.
Oh
You
my
finished your
gosh.
course. So I
Eva
was like,
waited.
exactly. It was great.
Now she
But
can't wait.
no, exactly. So I think just thinking ahead was really helpful in that sense. But managing things on a daily basis, I would say it's really about prioritizing what's really important and making
Mhm.
sure that you are only doing things that are going to make you happy, make you money. Unfortunately, it is a business.
You have
Um,
to as a parent in a
uh
situation where both individuals need to work. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And my husband is very supportive and works very long hours and wakes up really early. So we kind of take shifts. And I was struggling a little bit in terms of how to manage and how to prioritize, which is why I got a
Mhm.
coach. And I highly recommend if anyone is struggling to get a coach. I actually worked with you, Brooke, which was amazing.
Oh, you did?
I
My
did.
mom brain.
You
I forgot. No,
remember?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I think it was definitely one of the best experiences just to have that
Thank
support
you.
and accountability and to work with somebody who was just on the same page in terms of having ADHD and being a mom. It's really nice to have that help.
And we both had very different, even though we're both business owners and both of us have spouses that
Uh-huh.
work as well. Our pregnancy experience was different, extremely
Uh-huh.
different, and even after how Ava shows up, how Brielle shows up. So,
Mhm.
your availability, not having a nanny, all of those things, the circumstances were day and night. And even though it was different, you were still able to put all those things into play and realize what was important, your health, your prioritization, not taking
Well,
over the world in one day.
yeah. I think it's hard because as a business owner, you have to really try not to compare yourself to other people because there's so many things that you can be doing in a business. Like nowadays with social media and there's podcasts and there's, all of these different modalities that you can be working on. But I think it's important to stick with your vision and your core values really and figure out what
Yeah,
is it that is actually going to make sense because it's so easy for us to impulsively just go from one thing to the next, right? We get that shiny object syndrome. And
totally.
I that's the thing that I've worked on the most is not comparing myself to other people, really not saying yes to everything, trying to minimize my schedule and setting time, like the realistic amount of time that it's going to take me to do things. And also being flexible because at any given time, my daughter might need me to feed or, do something. So you always have to leave that extra time as a mom without a nanny.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed a shift in the perfectionism in you as well.
Mhm.
Being a mom, being coached, being a coach,
Mhm.
knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect and you have to get it out, whether it be the content, whether it be parenting, life is happening and you do your best you can. But I noticed that shift in you being okay to just say yes to yourself by getting your stuff out and not overanalyzing it.
Yeah, I think you said to me once, done is better than perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been my motto, honestly, for the last few months. Like, just get it out. It doesn't need to be perfect. No one knows what it would look like if it was perfect, and there's no such thing as perfect. So just
Correct.
do it. And I think a lot of times we just get in our own way with that all or nothing thinking. And so
Hmm.
my advice would be to like get out of your own way and either accept help, get a coach, just do the things that actually make you happy. Don't do other things because you feel like you should be because other people are doing them.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, we both are coaches and all of these things are great in theory, right? And at the same time, we still struggle with it, but have to remind ourselves of these things, and it's so easy, especially when your dopamine is low and you're breastfeeding, to exacerbate the ADHD symptoms. And with those exacerbated ADHD symptoms come all of these things like analysis paralysis, comparison, RSD. So sometimes, like you mentioned, just getting that extra support, whether it's even talking it out with a spouse or a friend, or, tapping your parents on their shoulder and just like having them repeat back to you what you're saying. Sometimes we just need it, and that's okay.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think having that community support was so helpful. And actually, like being in your maintaining momentum group after working with you
Mhm.
or during the time I worked with you has been so helpful just to be around people who really get you and you don't have to apologize for who you are. You can stumble on your words and you can lose your train of thought and you can just be vulnerable and everyone just gets it. That's what
Mhm.
you really need. You need that community. You need to find your people and not have to explain yourself every single time you speak. Not that you have to anyway, but I think just most of us with ADHD kind of feel that way where,
Mhm.
we kind of feel like we have to constantly apologize for
Different.
what we're doing.
Totally. And also at the same time, we're apologizing because we're judging ourselves, thinking that we're not doing it well enough. And I don't think we made this clear yet to the people listening that your daughter wakes up every 2 hours. Is she still doing that?
Um, she still wakes up to feed like 3 times a night, I would
And
say.
she's 14 months. I'm not
Yeah.
shaming you, but I want to give everyone a picture of what your life is like, a little glimpse.
Yeah.
and just share like what you're saying and what you've accomplished with all of this. I mean, this is not an easy thing. Even though you have a partner, you are breastfeeding.
Right.
You are waking up at least 3 times a night. You are also working for a good how many hours a day? 5, 6? Like straight, right?
Yeah, about 5 hours straight, but in between
So
naps.
in between sleeping, right?
Yes.
So naps,
I
exactly.
don't
There's no
sleep, I nap.
reliable full sleep for you, right? So Nicole, not only is she breastfeeding and her dopamine is low, she's also not sleeping reliably because it's all for good reason, right? Again, not shaming you. And you have a very successful business and you're a wonderful wife and friend, and you can get dressed in the morning and put on a smile and take walks. So everything that you're sharing has so much weight to it. The prioritization, the asking for help, because you truly are not like in a position where you can do everything that you want to be doing. Like you are full-time momming and essentially full-time business owner.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, it's a lot, but I love it. And I think that it's really important to be in a space that you absolutely love. Because if I wasn't, I wouldn't be able to get that dopamine that I need from it. If it was a
Hmm.
job that I didn't like, right? We have interest-based minds. So we need to do things that are interesting to us. So helping people and, working with my clients and coaching, I'm like invested in their outcomes. So that is what makes me get up every day and be excited to do it. And of course, I still prioritize my family first because it's important. I have to. But it's definitely nice to be able to help other people. And I think that's really, really what keeps me going. But also, like I said, I try not to put too much on my plate at once. Like I've got my
Yeah.
coaching program and I have my course and I do my one-on-one coaching as well, but I only schedule a few things a day. Otherwise, I can just leave enough time to make sure that I can do what I want to do. And
Hmm.
as I think it might be easy to beat yourself up and kind of say like I'm not doing enough, but it is enough because if you put too much on your plate and you don't do any of it because you're overwhelmed, then you're not really going to go anywhere. So I'd say just prioritize the few things that you really want to get done, check them off, and then start again tomorrow.
I love that. Tell us a little bit about intuitive eating and how you help your clients with ADHD.
So, intuitive eating is really just eating in a way that feels good to your body, mentally and physically. It is research based. It was created by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Rich like back in the 80s. And it's only now becoming really popular, kind of trendy almost in the nutrition world. But it's not a diet, it's actually anti diet. And it allows you to really heal and make peace with food. It's based on 10 principles of, making peace with food, rejecting the diet, culture, rejecting the diet mentality, um, really just living your life intentionally and eating in a way that feels good to your body. And I wouldn't go over all the principles now, but what I do is basically I've taken the principles of intuitive eating and I've tailored them to the ADHD brain. So a lot of people will try intuitive eating, but they'll fail because they don't have support
Hmm.
or because it's not tailored to ADHD. The
Hmm.
reason being, we struggle with a lot of different things with executive function, right? So cooking, shopping, planning meals is all very, very difficult for us. So the first thing that we have to do is create an abundance of food options. So meaning that you have to make sure that you always have food ready and available to you. That's really difficult for us. So I teach people how to create an abundance of food, how to make sure that you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks available to you all the time, and how to simplify that because it gets really difficult. And if you're adding in all these food rules, and if if you have a lot of negative self-talk, if you're dieting, I teach you how to get out of that mindset. And not only that, but there's a lot of other reasons why we struggle to eat with ADHD, right? We have that emotional dysregulation, that we have boredom, and we stim with food, and we have distractibility, and all of these other things that make us binge eat, right? So just losing track of time completely, or medication lowering our appetite. We might end up going a whole day without eating and then we'll binge later on because of it. So all of these different things that we struggle with, I first bring awareness in the first stage of my course and program. So how is ADHD affecting the way you eat? And then I get into the principles of intuitive eating based on everything that I know about the ADHD brain, and really hone in on that and make sure that people understand it and that they're able to just listen to their bodies, feel their hunger cues, feel their fullness cues, stop eating when they feel full, and really just get out of that negative mindset that we get stuck in.
Yeah. So you are an ADHD specialist, you're an intuitive eating specialist, and this course and this program that you've made is specifically for the ADHD brain. You've taken the intuitive eating principles and applied it since you live with it, you
Uh-huh.
understand it, you simplify, you break down. I've seen parts of it. I mean, it's so well
Right.
done.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's specifically for us with ADHD, and there's a community that I have as well that's based around everyone that's taken the course or my programs or my one-on-ones is in this community. And it's just nice to have that additional support on a weekly basis so that people can really shut out the noise of diet culture and realize that they're on the right path and they are actually doing the right thing for their long-term health by eating what feels good to them and not just following a diet for 2 weeks and then feeling like a failure because that's what happens to us.
There
So,
must be a lot of mindset that goes into this as well, because I would imagine someone who was raised in a diet culture or, they had these fixed ideas of what their body should look like and how to get there, to
mhm,
break that down and then teach your principles to
definitely.
success. Is that something that people struggle with?
Oh yeah, it's all mindset. Most of the people in my group have grown up with parents who have made comments about how they eat, telling them that they need to lose weight, that they shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
eating certain things. Like one of the women in my program today told me that just the other day she was sitting at the table for her daughter's birthday party and her mom looked at her and said, "You really shouldn't be eating that cake," to her. And it's it's a lot of like well-meaningful comments, I think I should say, by family because they think they're doing the right thing by, you know, helping, I guess you can say, and I'm doing air quotes with
Mm-hmm.
helping because our families think they're helping us by telling us not to eat certain foods because they think it's going to make us healthy. But actually, that restriction, that restrictive mentality, that scarcity mindset that we get stuck
Mm-hmm.
in is actually what creates binging. It creates the feeling of out of control around food. You just get stuck in the binge restrict cycle, and it's really hard to get out of that when you are stuck in the same mindset. So you have to get out of that mindset. So a lot of it is just letting people know that they have unconditional permission to eat and they're not a bad person if they eat quote unquote bad food. Eating an
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy food doesn't make you unhealthy. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it is just giving yourself permission to eat those convenience foods and just nourish your body in some way rather than trying to be perfect. That wellness culture really gets stuck in our heads, right? Like you need to
Mm-hmm.
optimize your health and you need to eat perfectly and this is
Right.
going to improve you. And it's great,
Right.
but if you can't even eat 3 meals a day, then that doesn't matter, right? We struggle so much with
Exactly.
ADHD. Like, just get something in your body is really what it comes down to.
Exactly. Exactly. And we need that fuel to focus,
Yeah.
and regulate our moods. So
Mhm.
you're a mom now. How do you flip the script as a mom who was brought up in the diet culture and probably likely got you to do what you're doing now to
Mhm.
teach this positive message? How do you, and she's only 14 months, I get it, but it starts now, right? So how do you instill positive messages around food with Ava?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, with kids, it's really important to make sure that you don't put certain foods on a pedestal. So all foods are neutral. There's no moral value in foods. So you're not a good kid if you eat your vegetables. You're not a bad kid if you don't eat your vegetables. You're not a bad kid if you eat too much candy. Candy is neutral. So it starts out by just offering certain types of food. So whatever food you're eating, and then making it so that they don't think that sweets are a treat and they don't think that they're bad either. So, offering candy on a consistent basis, I know it sounds crazy and people are probably like, "What? You want to give candy to your kid all the time?" But giving sweets and things like that to your kid all the time will make it's called the process of habituation when you're just neutralizing it and you're normalizing it. If you give a kid treats only at certain periods of time, they're going to be so excited by it. They're going to think it's special. And then
Mhm.
when they do have it, they're going to eat a lot of it as if it's the last
Oh
time they're going to
yeah.
have it for a long time.
Oh yeah. I remember we had a very regulated household as far as what food was in the house. And
Mm-hmm.
I would go to my one friend neighbor's house. Her name was Tara, and her mom had soda, and she had like this huge closet of candy everywhere, gumballs with sugar inside the gumballs. And I would binge. I would just go wild eating every bit of candy in that
Mm-hmm.
closet because I knew that was like my one and only time. And I just, yeah, went nuts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's
But to your point,
exactly what happened with kids, but it happens with us too. Like if you're on a diet, let's say for 2 to 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden you have candy around, you're just gonna go nuts. And then you're gonna be like,
mhm,
I promise this is the last time. I'm gonna start my diet tomorrow. Right. And then you go through the cycle again and then again and again. So we need to make these foods normal and just neutral in our lives by allowing yourself to eat them whenever you want. Now, obviously, kids are going to they might ask for the candy all the time because they're kids and they don't know what's
uh-huh,
actually healthy for them, or what, I shouldn't say what's healthy, but like what's more nourishing to their bodies. But as an adult, it's our job to offer our kids a variety of foods, protein, carbs, fats, but then you can also add a little bit of sweetness with that. So if your kid comes and asks for, Mama, can I have a cookie? And it's like almost lunchtime. Just say, you can have, a cookie along with your lunch. Or you can have a cookie and you can have this sandwich, etc., etc.
mhm,
But not making it so special by saying you need to have your lunch and then you can have the cookie. Because then the kid's like, oh, the cookie's exciting and it's special. And it's just sort of making it a neutral situation. And that will make it so that they know that they can have it whenever they want. It's not special. And kids are very intuitive. Like we're all born intuitive eaters. So
mhm,
they will not just eat cookies constantly all day, every day. They will actually crave other things as well. They know what's good for their bodies. It's important to make sure that you're also offering them snacks regularly, like every 2 to 3 hours, because that's how often,
mhm.
they need to eat. But as long as you're offering carbs and protein together, that's going to be the best for their blood sugars, just like it is for ours.
Do you have any suggestions? So I'm married to a family of ADHDers. My husband has ADHD. I have ADHD. My two stepsons have ADHD. And individuals with ADHD, children especially, can be picky eaters. We know that. Sensory issues. So, my one stepson, every time he comes to our house, yeah, I don't eat chicken anymore. Yeah, I don't eat steak anymore. Yeah, I don't eat that anymore. Okay, so that's the plan for this week. So now he eats pizza and it can't be gluten free. He has a specific type of pizza. He eats chicken nuggets and pasta. Those are the three things that he'll eat. How do we deal with that?
Very common. I mean, if it's sensory issues, then just finding out what it is about the sensory that he struggles with. Like, does he not like
Mhm,
chewy? Does he not like crispy? Does it have to be cut a certain way? There's things that we can do to like adjust the texture and the flavors and things. All we can do is offer the food. They decide how much they want to eat. What I usually recommend is offering a bunch of like safe foods and then offer a little bit of one new food for them to try.
mhm.
That way, you're not offering a whole bunch of new stuff at once, and it might kind of freak them out. And also, if they don't eat it, then they don't really have anything available. So, just continuing to offer the new foods and don't push it on them. Don't say you have to take
Mhm,
a bite. You can say, can you at least try it? And if they try it, great. If they don't, we can't force them. The more they
mhm.
come to the table feeling forced and like it's kind of a stressful situation, the less they're going to enjoy eating and the less likely they will be to try it. So just kind of pretend as if you don't really care, which is
Yeah.
so
No,
hard to
that it's
do.
the reverse psychology.
It
It
is.
works.
It's the same like trying to get my daughter to eat. She's 14 months. She just like stopped liking certain things and she'll just throw them on the floor. And you just have to pretend like you don't care that she eats or not. And it'll make the whole process of eating less stressful. Because I mean, I know
Yes.
there's a lot of people listening right now, and I have lots of clients who are like this. They have sensory issues and they have these very like negative memories of being sat at the table and not being able to leave until they finish their
Until they finish
vegetables.
their plate. Yep.
Yeah, and they were
And you
forced to
can't
eat
have
their
dessert
veggies.
until you yes.
Exactly. And so all of these things like create those negative memories. And I don't want anyone listening, like if you've been doing this, I don't want you to feel guilty because this is what we were taught when we were younger. So it makes sense that you'll
Right.
do it. And of course you have
It was
every
the norm.
positive intention to like get your kids to eat, but at the same time backing off a little bit and allowing them some autonomy will actually do the opposite, and eventually they will try it. It helps also for kids who actually kind of understand if you teach them why they should eat certain foods, like, oh, this food is orange and it's, helpful for your eyes and you'll have better eyesight, kind of relating the colors to what it does for their body. That can sometimes help as well. And there's a great book called Intuitive Eating for Kids
Sure.
out there for anyone who's listening. That's a really great book.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
What I am excited about, I know it's not official yet, but Nicole and I have been chatting. And because both of us have, a variety of information with ADHD parenting, we both had very different experiences. And at the same time, our business owners, wives, and moms, we are thinking about starting a support group for new moms and expecting moms. We're happy to share our experiences, be there to bounce ideas off of, be resources. We have a lot of good reading material, but things that we can share from our personal experience and the group can share. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm just putting it out there in the universe because if we manifest it, it will come. We're likely thinking about it in the next month or two. I'm just putting Nicole on the spot, but we've spoken a bunch about it. It is not easy to have ADHD and be pregnant, as you mentioned. That's a whole other episode, but there's a lot of hormone changes. You get that increase in the dopamine first trimester, and then it decreases, and then it decreases again once you have the baby and you're breastfeeding. And then there's the stimulant talk. Do you take stimulants? Can you take stimulants? Can you take your antidepressants? If you don't take your antidepressants, will you get postpartum depression? If you do take it, will it impact, the baby? All these questions, right? So you and I have had very different journeys on that, medication, no medication. So I am looking forward to helping other new moms feel supported through this process.
I am too. I think we're like highly undersupported postpartum in general. Like women in general, I think, are very undersupported in that aspect. It's always all about the baby, less about the mom. And I think with ADHD, we're at higher risk for postpartum depression and anxiety too, right? Just for lots of reasons, comorbidities and things. But yeah, also like if you've been taking medication, for years and it's worked, and then all of a sudden you have to stop, you have to learn how to like function again.
This is a lot of work. I would rather be present for my baby than, put myself through so much stress. But there's a lot of shoulds, and yeah, it's weeding all of that out and trusting yourself and your mommy intuition. And I guess this whole episode is really just trusting your intuition as a parent, as a child, as a human, as someone who eats, someone who makes decisions.
It's really about intuitive living, trusting your body, learn that your body is actually very wise if you listen to it. It's so hard to live in a neurotypical world, though, for us. And I think the one thing that my husband always says, he reminds me, he's like, just surrender. Stop trying to keep up in the neurotypical world. Just surrender. Like, just just chill out. Just know that it's like your brain is different. Have some self compassion. It's going to be okay. You're okay. There's nothing wrong with you. Um, and just find your people, find your community. Like these podcasts and, the groups are so helpful. That's why I'm so excited for that support group. I can't wait for it.
Yes, same here. It's a must. But yeah, that whole surrender thing, it's like be you, right? Be intuitively, authentically you. Whatever tools you need to be you and be confident in you, that intrinsic self-esteem, that true self-esteem that Dr. Gabor Mate talks about, which is so hard for even neurotypicals, to really get there. Whatever it is, whatever it takes to rewire your brain and be okay being and not comparing yourself to what you think you should be doing and just letting go and being okay making mistakes, not being perfect, not being the perfect mom, not being the perfect person to yourself, not being the perfect wife, whatever it is, just surrendering. I love that.
Yeah. It helps.
Well, thank you. I think that's a good stopping point. Thank you for being on Successful with ADHD. For those listening, make sure to stay tuned for upcoming support group for new moms and expecting moms. And Nicole, where can people find you if they need support with intuitive eating and ADHD?
So they can find me at eatingwithadhd.com or at Eating with ADHD on Instagram, where I am most of the time if I'm not napping or feeding.
Or doing her whole other job.
Yes, or working.
I think you provided so much valuable information to this community, as you do always. And I am excited for this to launch, hopefully in the next few weeks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Again.
Thank you for being on Successful with ADHD.
Thanks, Brooke.